Welcome to Let's Talk Property, an informal podcast show all about the UK property and mortgage market. I'm Nizam, and joining me is my co-host Lee. Whether you're a seasoned property investor or just starting to think about buying your first home, this podcast is for you. We'll be discussing a range of topics, including the latest market trends, tips for finding the perfect property, and how to secure the best mortgage deal. So join us as we explore the world of property and help you make informed decisions about your next property purchase. Today, we are going to talk about, or Lee's going to share with us, 7 ways that you can save for a mortgage deposit quickly. So I'm looking forward to to listening to what these 7 magic tips you've got, Ali.
The last one's really good, by the way, and it involves getting free money. So I know that would be music to most people's ears. It's not a scam, I promise, or a new side hustle. It's worth listening to. But the last one's a good one.
You just need a firearm, a ski mask, and a local bank.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. A getaway driver. You can get a getaway.
Yeah, you definitely need a getaway driver and a new identity. Let's should we jump straight in? Do you want to introduce the topic to us? And
I guess the reason why I'm doing it is probably one of the biggest challenges when buying a property as a first-time buyer is getting the deposit together. And particularly as we're kind of recording this in sort of early quarter of 2023, energy bills are going up, and the cost of living's going up, and everything's going up. So I kind of wanted to come up with some 7 sort of not shortcuts, I suppose, but 7 tips really that can help first-time buyers get the mortgage deposit quickly, I suppose, or quicker. So hopefully they'll find it useful. Yeah,
definitely. I think this is the challenge every first-time buyer faces. Unless you come into some money, unless you're in a fortunate position where you can get some help. I mean, this is what most people are going to want to know. How can I get? That's the first barrier, isn't it? So how can I get a deposit together as quickly as possible? Like you said, with everything else going up, I think it's a really good topic for us to share right now, and hopefully there'll be something in there. I'm sure there will, for someone, for everyone to take away at least 1 or 2 points from here, if not more. So looking forward to it.
Looking forward to jumping in on this one. Yeah, looking forward to it.
Great. So should we kick off? So what I guess, do you want to start with what the minimum deposit required is? What are the challenges that most people face with saving the deposit?
Yeah, so I guess being in the mortgage world, or both of us working in the mortgage world, we see it a lot. So generally to buy a home, that it is a minimum of a 5% deposit. So 5% of the property value is generally required in most cases to buy a property. So that's a big ask. 5%. I don't know what the average house price is at the minute. I don't know, it's 270, 280. I suppose it depends where you are in the country, but it's probably, I don't know, 300-ish, maybe slightly under around here in Cambridgeshire. 5%. That's a big ask. That's 15,000. For a £300,000 property, for example. So, particularly if you're renting, particularly if everything with the cost of living going up, then that's a big ask for anyone. So. In terms of minimum deposit required, it's 5% of the property value. There are some schemes, which I will touch on shortly, that don't require a deposit necessarily, but they might not be the right schemes for you. But we'll touch on that shortly. But generally speaking, 5% deposit is needed to get on the property ladder.
Fantastic. So I guess what tips can you give first-time buyers? In particular, obviously, it's normally first-time buyers that need to save for a deposit. What tips can you give for any first-time buyers listening, or people looking to get on a property ladder, to get their deposit even together as quickly as possible?
Yeah, I've come up with seven really good ones here. I think are really good, and some of these people may not be aware, and what I'm trying to get is to get first-time buyers to think outside the box in terms of how they can get the deposits. A lot of them just think, I need to put money aside, blah, blah, blah. So hopefully this will help. But the first one is It's quite straightforward, but it is ask for help. Ask for help. So you can, and banks do accept gifted deposit, what we call a gifted deposit. So your deposit could be, or some of your deposit could be gifted from, more specifically, family. So grandparents, mum, dad, brother, sister. So if you've got any family members, and I know this could be an awkward conversation, and it's difficult to ask for money to buy a home, particularly if it's gifted. But it's always worth asking the question, and you never know what response you're going to get. But if you're struggling to get any deposit, or maybe you're struggling to get to your deposit target, you've got some saved, but actually you're not quite there, then maybe you could get a friend of more specifically family member just to give you the difference, or maybe give you that bump up with your deposit. So most banks accept gifted deposit. I think a lot of people think that they don't, but actually you can have a deposit gifted from family members. So that would be a big one.
Absolutely. And I think that is one that we see most commonly, isn't it, as mortgage and protection advisors, is, a lot of people do rely on that support from family, in particular parents. And, luckily a lot of people are able to get that support one way or another. So, I always find it's really, really difficult to get on the ladder without getting any support at all. So I think that's a really good one, is that, swallow your pride a little bit and ask for help. And you never know.
Yeah, absolutely. You never know. Second one is, I always like this one. It's my favourite one. And I think I've said this in a previous podcast, is put your savings away on payday. You are like 80+% more likely to save money if you're putting your money aside on payday. Very simple fact is that you're less likely to overspend. So you're putting money aside for the bills that you need, and maybe some for your living costs and everything else. And that little bit of extra money, put it away on payday. You're a lot more likely to save that way. So that, I think, is some 80+% more likely to save if you're putting it away on, or putting it in a separate account on payday, was one of the statistics I saw.
Brilliant. It's that whole theory of pay yourself first, isn't it? It's pay yourself first. A lot of people, it's that it goes back to an old, I think I mentioned it before, the book that I was reading, the Richest Man in Babylon. And that is a really, really key takeaway from that book, is he says, like you said, you're much more likely to actually save if you pay yourself first. That's your, treat yourself as you would treat your bills in a way. Obviously, you still need to keep up with your bills and make sure you've got enough money to do that. Yeah. But you're absolutely right. I think, if you're putting that away and treating it as if it's a loan, or a credit card payment, get it out your account, get it into some way that you can't really see it, or, maybe not locked away, but is somewhere where you aren't tempted to take it out again. Statistically, it's a brilliant tip. Really, really good one.
Yeah, absolutely. Third one is cut unnecessary costs. I think that's quite an obvious one, but actually, just have a look through what you're paying for. I think the big one nowadays is subscriptions. We're all guilty of having subscriptions, aren't we? Whether it's for various things, Netflix or whatever else. But they build up. There's so many subscriptions of things. You might not necessarily use them anymore. I'm not saying cancel your subscription and then your kind of your deposit's there, but but just cutting unnecessary costs, or cutting back, or and just having a look and budget, really, I suppose, is a big one. Looking at ingoings and outgoings, and budget, and look at unnecessary costs and things that you no longer require.
Brilliant one. And it's an obvious one, but it's one that actually people probably do it once and then don't do it again. And I think, I've certainly learnt the lesson recently. I got a letter or an email to say my Sky bill was going up. And when I looked at it, I thought, do we actually need to pay for Sky Cinema? Or should we just buy the box set of Harry Potter, because that's all my wife watches on it. So it's kind of looking at, and we're paying 15-20 quid a month for that. Do I really need 5 devices on Netflix, or could I have 2? Do I need ultra high def, or am I right with high def? I don't notice the difference anyway. So I did exactly that, like you said, Lee, and actually saved probably 30 quid a month. Not a huge amount, but if you're doing that across the board and you're doing it regularly, because one thing I've realized it's doing it once and then leaving it for a year and doing it again. It's not good enough. You need to be doing this regularly because bills creep up, don't they? And often there are things you can do to try and bring them back down again. So I think it sounds like an obvious one, but I think it's a really, really important one, and probably one that people could find some savings with if they look.
Yeah, absolutely. Even if it's, like you say, 30, 50 pounds a month or whatever it is, that's 500, 600 pounds over the year, isn't it? And if you're saving for 12 months, that, that's it does all build up. It does all build up, no matter what it is. So good point.
Brilliant.
Next one is looking at, I don't want to delve too much, but it's more of an understanding of this, is looking at the available home buying schemes. So home buying schemes can help you, believe it or not, with, in a roundabout way, with the deposit you hold. So, for example, I know we mentioned minimum of a 5% deposit. That's generally required. But in some instances, you may be required to get more of a deposit because of the property values in your area, or it may be a bit more of a jump for what you can achieve. So there are schemes out there. I'll name one. One's a shared ownership scheme. So if you're listening to this, one thing to consider maybe a shared ownership. It is part rent, part mortgage. I don't delve too much into that, but sometimes it doesn't necessarily require you to have a deposit, but also it may only require you to have a deposit for the value of the share that you're buying. So not actually the full value of the property, but actually you would only need a 5% deposit for the share. So that would mean you would need less of a mortgage, but also less of a deposit. So if you can't quite get the mortgage borrowing as well, but also you can't quite reach the full 5%, for argument's sake, I'll very briefly explain, if you have a £300,000 property, a value of a property, and you're buying half of it for 150,000, you would only need a 5% deposit for the 150,000, not for the full 300. So that could get you over the line. So it's a scheme to consider. And the other one, it's a new one, is the first home scheme, which gives you a huge discount on the property value generally. We're seeing some big discounts on new build properties in particular. So you're effectively buying a £300,000 property, and all discounts do vary, but you could potentially buy it for 250,000, which means you wouldn't need to come up with the extra deposit to get a £300,000 property. It would mean you still need a 5%, but it could help you kind of bring those gaps or bridge those gaps in terms of borrowing, as opposed to increasing your deposit. You may get a discount on the property value. So my sort of fourth one would be just to look at the schemes that are available, and speak to a professional.
100%. I think that's a great tip, and a lot of people don't know what schemes are out there until you sit down and ask. And I think you're right. What can you control? Well, you might not be able to control how much more you can save a month or what deposit you can get to. You might be doing all these things already and thinking, I can't do any more. I'm not going to save any quicker. What you can control is what schemes you use, what support you rely on out there, and also, being smarter about it. Like you said earlier, thinking outside the box. If you're buying a property value which is lesser, your deposit is going to be lesser. You don't need as big a deposit, but you're still getting on the ladder. Would you rather wait 3 years for a full deposit, or actually get on the ladder in a year and stop paying rent in the meantime and only buy 50% or whatever a share it is? But I think that's a huge tip for people, definitely.
Yeah. Brilliant. The fifth one, it's very easy said than done, but it's almost get a side hustle. It's kind of what I've called it. So it doesn't necessarily mean go get a second job. I mean, that is something you could consider, maybe doing a bit of overtime somewhere, or maybe your current role. Think about what you're doing in your current role. If you're in a sales role, I know the idea is to kind of, I'm not going to give you sort of sales expert advice, but it could be, what ways you can make extra money to increase your income, to increase what's coming in, to then increase what you're saving. So it could be things like having a look at overtime at work, or it could be trying to find ways to improve the sales at work if you're commission based. I don't know. Or if you're at home, it could be, I know Etsy is a big tool where people sort of design things and sell and make money from eBay and everything else. There's lots of sort of little side hustles that people have nowadays. I'm not kind of saying that would be yours, but it's kind of thinking outside the box and think about what you can do to your income, and how you can increase your income and find ways to increase your income, which in turn would then obviously give you more sort of money to save for a deposit. So easier said than done, but have you considered overtime? Have you considered a little side hustle? Have you considered your current workplace, what you can do for sales? Have you considered a pay rise? I probably shouldn't say that. Probably not many employees would like me like this one. But have you considered asking for a pay rise? That could be another one as well. So hopefully that's got you thinking outside the box on that one.
Brilliant, great one. Again, one probably people don't always think about is your income is what your income is, but there may be, who knows, your employer may have that sort of scope to offer you a little bit more, and that can potentially help as well. And it's a great tip.
Number 6 is, now tread carefully with this one, but it can be a really, really useful tip, is either get a lodger or rent a spare room. Now, appreciate if you're currently renting a property, you will need permission from the landlord, and not many landlords will probably allow you to do this, but you never know. But always check your contract. If you're getting a lodger or you're renting a spare room, you could be in a unique situation where they could help you with the costs of your bills or cost of living. If you're living at home with your parents, double check with your parents, get permission from them first if you're getting a lodger in. But it's a bit of a wayward one, but it is something to consider, because you just never know. I know particularly in maybe more densely populated areas like London and Cambridge, there are the more quirkier properties. There are more places where you can rent a room and rent a bedroom or rent a spare room or get a lodger. And some landlords may allow that, but it is something to consider, is getting a lodger or renting a spare room, because that will massively increase the incomings on your for your money. Yeah.
Excellent. Great tip. I think that's a good one.
And lastly, this is my kind of bonus one, and this is the biggest one. If you are a first-time buyer,
I'll do a drum roll for this one.
What's that?
I'll do the drum roll. This is what everyone's been waiting for. No pressure.
If you're a first-time buyer and you're listening to this right now and you are saving for a deposit, it's very important that you have this. A lifetime ISA, now a savings vehicle. So a lifetime ISA is in effect a savings vehicle, or an ISA as it were, and it effectively gives you a 25% bonus every year on what you have in your savings. That is huge. There is some criteria with it, which I don't want to jump into too much, but I'll kind of cover the key facts. You can save up to £4,000 a year in it with interest, and then you get a 25% bonus. So effectively, every year you can get an extra £1,000. So if you're saving over the next few years, or have already been saving in a lifetime ISA, fantastic. But it's free money. £1,000 a year. That's pretty big. You don't get there anywhere else, and it's not very often you get free money from the government. So that's really good.
And I guess double win is it's in an ISA, so it's tax free as well. Tax free money. So yeah, absolutely. I think, like you said, there's criteria, isn't there, around that?
There is property value limits. I think it's 450, for example. So obviously there's not many first-time buyers looking above 450, but if you do, obviously that is a limit to be mindful of. And it is, just to be clear, it is effectively replaced the Help to Buy ISA. So if you're looking for the Help to Buy ISA now, I don't think that's any longer. If you're in the Help to Buy ISA, that is still readily, I think that's still available in terms of if you've already signed up for one. But this is effectively replacing the Help to Buy ISA. And when you get the bonus, just to be clear, is when you buy the property. So when you buy the property and you've completed, The solicitor will then apply for the funds, and then you will receive, I believe, you'll receive the 25% bonus. But it has to be with a specific event, and it has to be something like buying the property. That's when you get the bonus, just to be clear.
Do you know also? I think on that as well, you have to be under the age of 40 when you open it.
Yes. Yeah.
Is that
yeah,
right?
You do.
And then,
yeah,
so it's like you said, there's a few things to check in terms of eligibility, but it's a great it's a great scheme, I guess. And again, I think if you're not using it, I think you have to use it to buy your first home, don't you? But if you're not using it for that, or you decide not to use it for that, you can then use it as a sort of effectively a pension, can't you? Which again, you'd want to get advice around, but there's some good options on that one, definitely.
Yeah, I think it has a few purposes, but specifically if you're a first-time buyer listening to this and you haven't opened one up, then it's a bit of a no-brainer, really. Providing you fit criteria, there's free money in it for you. Particularly if you're saving over the next 12 months or so. There's free money in there for you. So urge you to get signed up.
Free money. That's what we all want. That's what we're here for.
I'll just summarise on the 7 points just briefly. So ask for help. So don't forget to ask for family and friends for a gifted deposit. That is acceptable with the bank, so you can get a gifted deposit. Put savings away on payday. I think you're 80% or more likely to save if you're putting your money away on payday. Cut unnecessary costs. So look at your subscriptions. Look at what you're spending in goings and outs. Cut any unnecessary sort of payments. Look at the available home buying schemes, shared ownership we touched on, first home scheme, speak to a professional, mortgage advisor, etc. Regarding that. Get a side hustle, have a look at ways you can increase your earnings, maybe work overtime as well. Something to think about. And tread carefully on this one, but you could look at getting a lodger or rent a spare room. That could give you a little bit more income. And lastly, obviously, is the lifetime ISA. If you're a first-time buyer and you haven't got one, get yourself signed up. There's some free money there.
There's definitely going to be at least one or two things that everyone can take from that, if not more, that they wouldn't have thought about. And I think really, really good tips on thinking outside the box. Like you said, most people will think, I need a deposit, I need to put money into a bank account, and then when I reach that target, I can then buy a property. But what we often find is life happens, events happen, car breaks down, problems, health might deteriorate, all sorts of things that can cost money, eat into that savings. You're then back to the start, or you're back a few steps. So actually being doing, I think, one of these things on their own might not make a huge difference, but actually these things all together collectively, or 2 or 3 of them, if you're doing some of them, I think they could make quite a big difference to getting on the ladder quicker, definitely.
Yeah, and I think you touched on it. It's just getting people to think outside the box. Don't just think about putting money into an account. There's so many people who are not aware that you can get gifted deposit from family. I didn't know I can get help from family. I come across that a lot. So collectively, hopefully it's going to be a huge help, and hopefully it gets people thinking what more they could do to save for their deposit quickly. Yeah.
And I guess a really good, just from our experience as advisors, not to touch on it too much, but really, really good tip, because, I've definitely helped a lot of people in the past where we've not been able to quite get them the borrowing they need, or for whatever reason, they need a bigger deposit. And they've told me at the start, maximum I've got is 5%, 10%, it's the maximum we can get together. You go away and you find an option. And then you come back and have that conversation to say, look, I can't quite get you the deposit. Is there any way of getting 15%? And the response is normally, let me ask this person, or let me see. And you know what? Half the time they come back and they say no, but actually half the time they do come back and say, oh, actually, my mum wanted to support me, and was able to, I didn't realise, or my brother has decided he's going to help me. Or so, like you said, I think just jumping into the biggest takeaway for me, I think it is everyone wants to be, or a lot of people want to be, quite independent. Buying a house is a big deal. You want to kind of have it all on your shoulders, and look back and say, yeah, I did that all on my own. But actually swallow your pride a little bit. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Do it in the way that you're comfortable with. Do it where you kind of have the relationship with the right people to do it. Ultimately, it's normally immediate family, isn't it? A lot of lenders are comfortable with, but some will accept from friends and things, aren't they? There are options, aren't there, if it's not immediate family?
Yeah, absolutely. They're friends, and you can have friends, which can help with the deposit. If you've got very generous friends, then they can help as well. But I take it that's your favourite point. Your favourite.
That is definitely, that's a big one. I think I would be thinking now, if I'm a first time buyer, thinking, right, who haven't I? Have I had that conversation? When did I last have that conversation? Because situations can change, and is there anyone else I can speak to about helping me achieve my goals? So, that's probably my big takeaway. What's yours?
It's just got to be a reinforced lifetime ISA. It's free money, as you say. So if you haven't opened one up already, get yourself down to the bank or pick up the phone nowadays. I don't know if not many people probably head over to the bank. I think
the banks are closed, aren't they?
Yeah, it's pick up the phone or get on your online banking and open one up. Yeah, absolutely. That'd be my best bit of advice for that one.
Fantastic. I like that one. That's excellent. Bit disappointed it wasn't rob a bank, but that could be tip number 8, couldn't it?
Yeah, you can, absolutely. I'm not. Yeah,
get there much quicker. No, that is just a joke, just to be clear, because it comes back to haunt me. Excellent, great. Was there anything else you wanted to share? I think that was a really good episode. If not,
no, I think hopefully that's helped, and hopefully it's been a good episode for everyone.
Fantastic.
I'll jump on with the outro, shall I?
Let's do it.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us for an episode of Let's Talk Property. We hope you found the discussion of the UK property market informative and helpful. If you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes, feel free to send us a message. Don't forget to subscribe to the show and follow us on social media for updates on future episodes. Until next time, we'll see you in the property market.
Perfect.
Ta-da!